Welcome back to Post Media's Ottawa Senators panel. I'm Bruce Garriock along with Wayne Scanlon of Sportsnet.ca, former Ottawa Citizen columnist. Wayne, the Senators coming off a 7-3 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're now seeing the post-trade deadline roster here, and they're pretty thin up front after trading Jean-Gabriel Pageau, Vladislav Nemestikov, and Tyler Ennis to various different places at the deadline. I think we're getting what we expect from this team. They're working hard, but obviously it's going to be a struggle for them to score goals.
Well, it is. I mean, they had a couple of nice wins on home ice, and I think Pittsburgh, it was kind of the perfect storm, Bruce. You had Pittsburgh coming, on the heels of a long losing string. They were going to be loaded for bear, and Ottawa was kind of ripe for the pickings. And losing Anisimov early in the first period, as you say, they're already short at forward. Now you lost a guy that was a big contributor to their last victory. So it's going to be a lot about, I think, seeing the kids over the last few weeks, all the while getting that Belleville team ready for this playoff run.
Well, and speaking of that Belleville team, let's start with Colin White. Colin White returns to the Senators lineup after missing 3 games with, I would expect, an upper body injury. I think he got hit in the shoulder against Columbus. The Senators talked about sending him down to Belleville for the playoffs, and then decided that wasn't the best course of action. He's got about 15 games here to kind of salvage his season and try and find a way to kind of have some confidence going back into the summer. They've decided that probably the best bet for him is a weight training program. Do you feel like Colin White has to get stronger and also maybe remove some of the pressure that he's feeling from his contract?
Yeah, I think it'll help him to get through this first year. I mean, he's been beset by injuries. I think about that groin injury that he had early in the season that kept him out for a long time. I think that really threw him off and threw him off his training. I think he's still a young player, does need a huge offseason for strength and conditioning. And who knows what the spring may bring. I mean, it looks like he won't be part of that Belleville team, but, there's a chance, I suppose, depending on the American roster, he could be playing in a World Championships. I mean, that's open to him, I guess, depending on the selection process. But it's really about the off season for him, getting stronger and coming back with a fresh slate next fall.
Well, and I really think, and not to belabor this point, that he has really probably spent too much time this season trying to live up to that contract. And you can't blame him for that. But sometimes you have to remove that pressure and just, one of the things I'd like to see him do more is shoot the puck, because I think he's got a great shot.
He does. He did have a scoring touch in college, and we saw that last year, and the reason that he got the contract that he did. But I think, Bruce, about Thomas Chabot, remember when he signed that long extension, even though it doesn't kick in until next year? Early days with him, he struggled a little bit because he was trying to do too much. And I think Colin White, he's just kind of into the lineup. He's got that big contract, and not as big as Chabot's, but big enough for a young player out of the NCAA. And I think he put pressure on himself, and then he got hurt. So it's just been a really difficult season. But, he's going to get opportunity. And I mentioned Anisimov's injury. He should get some playing minutes down the stretch here.
Well, let's talk about Thomas Chabot next, because Thomas Chabot he had a few games here on the weekend where he was plus 33 minutes. They showed a graphic last night where he leads the league, I think, in average ice time at 26 minutes a night. Do you think Thomas Chabot is playing too much? I'm sure this debate is going on all over the place. Is he playing too much, or do you understand DJ Smith's usage of him?
I think I do. I think Smith knows what he's doing, and he knows what he's got in Chabot. And what kills me is that those games that go into overtime, and he's out there playing half the overtime, it doesn't seem to bother him. Now, is Thomas Chabot the perfect defenseman? By no means. I think this is a guy that has a lot of work to do in his own end. I think they've had trouble getting the proper partner for him. His best partner, might be playing out of town right now with Dylan DeMello. I mean, I think he was a pretty good fit with Chabot, but somebody's got to fit in that role and help support him and let him do his thing. But it doesn't seem to bother him playing the extra minutes.
Do you think he's at his best when he's playing that many minutes?
I do. I watch him. He just seems to skate effortlessly, and he knows when he can kind of just go a bit more casually on the puck. Like, he seems to have a pacing mechanism that other players don't, because he's aware that he might be playing 30-plus minutes any given night.
Well, and I don't think you can ever, people complain about the ice time. I don't think you can ever blame a coach for putting his best players on the ice, especially in this situation. And,
No.
and it's pretty clear that, he really is limiting the ice time for England and Christian Jaros at this point, and in using Chabot more because, Chabot can handle these minutes. And he's going to have, there's another candidate for the World Championships, but there's another guy who has a long summer ahead of him as well.
Yeah, well, and if this was Eric Brandstrom and he was taking a pounding, and you remember Erik Karlsson when he first came up, teams would dump the puck in his corner and then go in and try to wear him down because he was a smaller player. Chabot can take the pounding. He doesn't mind the physical going. So I don't think it bothers him. I do think he has some work to do on his defensive game, and again, solidifying that, how is this defense going to be set up not only next year but the years ahead? It's going to be really interesting.
Well, looking ahead here, Marcus Högberg is away as we speak on this one. Marcus Högberg is away for personal leave back in Sweden, and it looks like Craig Anderson is going to get the opportunity here to carry the ball in what may in fact be his final season with the Senators. We don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. We don't know where Anders Nielsen is at this point. He's, as we speak, he's still sidelined with concussion issues. The clock is now ticking on the regular season, so we don't know if he's going to be back this year because there's really, there's just over 5 weeks left in the season. Is this a good way, though? They decide to keep Anderson at the deadline. I felt like this was the right thing to do. I wonder what your thoughts were.
Well, I think it's kind of turned out that way, hasn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I think we all thought, hey, if you can get a draft pick for him, a second or a third, go for it. Let him finish out his year and maybe catch on with a playoff team. But with Nielsen taking so long to come back from this concussion, and now Marcus Högberg, who basically had taken over the net, gone to Sweden, and then now he's got to come back and get reintegrated. I mean, thank God they kept Craig Anderson. It's really turned out to be a smart move, and he's playing for a contract now, isn't he? I mean, he's at 38 years of age. He'll be, I think it's 39 this summer, pending UFA, and I think he wants to play more. I get the notion that if someone will take a flyer on him for a year or two, he would come back. So he really wants to finish the year on a good note.
Well, and when you say exactly when playing for a contract, whether he's playing for a contract here or somewhere else, I mean, I don't think he's been totally ruled out next year. I think we all just kind of see this as his farewell tour because of the situation they have with the goaltenders in their organization. They have Joey Decord. They've got Philip Gustafsson. I mean, they've got some depth at goaltending here. It will be interesting to see, and I just want to ask you very quickly, when down the road, would you retire Craig Anderson's number, given everything he's done for the organization?
Possibly. I mean, he's been basically the pillar of stability since he came over. Was it 2011 that he came over here?
Yep.
Brian Murray
February
brought him over
2011.
from Colorado, and I think he probably saved Brian Murray's job because everybody was calling for his head at that time, and he brought stability to the organization. So I think he's definitely to be considered.
Well, one of the things we just got word on before we sat down here, Wayne, is that the Senators have let go new CEO Jim Little, only been on the job officially a couple of months, has I think been in the office since December. The details are limited, to say the least. The statement said that it wasn't consistent with the core values of the hockey team. What do you make of this?
Well, there's not much we can say about it. That hire was heralded. He was a guy that had a good track record in finance and sports sponsorship, sports management. Did a lot for the Canadian Open and the PGA. So I think it's a blow to the organization that they've lost another executive. They've gone through so many in that role. If you think about Nick Ruskowski and Tom Anselmi and all the way back to Cyril Leader, you go on and on. They've lost CFOs, marketing officers, and here's the chief executive officer. I think there were high hopes for what he could bring to the organization, and here they are back to the drawing board.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens. That's this week's edition of Post Media Ottawa Senators panel. Thanks very much to Wayne Scanlon for joining us. For Post Media, I'm Bruce Garriock with Wayne Scanlon.